You're listening to the Lumina podcast by Ad Valorem, where we shine a light on tax, business strategy and personal wealth.
From running a business to planning your future, we bring real-world insight to help you stay ahead.
Let's get into today's episode. So a warm welcome to another episode of Behind the Business, where we showcase some of the wonderful businesses that we have the pleasure of working with.
And today, really excited, we'd like to welcome Glenn Cook from National Locums to the podcast. Glenn's got a great business along with his brother and sister-in-law. We've been working together, I think, since 2009. Medical recruitment business, but also, like a lot of the entrepreneurs that are in Milton Keynes and in our client bank, there's lots of other ventures as well, which I will touch on that as well. Yep. But Glenn, thanks so much for taking some time out. I know you're really busy.
Thanks for having me.
No, not at all, guys. It'd be great. And perhaps if you just start by giving us a quick overview of National Locums, your journey to date.
Yeah. I mean, it's been some journey. We're into our 17th year now. So
that's made me feel really old. Thanks.
Just after you mentioned 2009, I was doing the maths really quickly. 2009 we set up National Locums, which we'll go into further down the line. But we then set up Locum People, which is a similar brand but was servicing slightly different areas, and Mediteam, which became a group in 2017, which is a recruitment group now, grown from my good self on a laptop in my dining room in 2009 to our Milton Keynes offices, 10,000 square foot with 100 and so.
And you have got really cool, seriously cool offices.
It's good, yeah.
Great office.
We need to make it fun for us to work in.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's a really important thing, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about bringing staff in, and let's say when you've got 100 plus staff, that's a lot of headaches.
Yeah.
A lot of it. So you need stuff that's going to be able to alleviate the pressure and allow people to relax and express themselves. So I think that's fantastic.
It's a sales floor, and like you said, there's big highs and big dopamine hits with sales and so forth. But then you need to have that kind of breakout so that you don't have kind of guys suffering from burnout of hard work. It's fast paced. It's never really slowed down in terms of the pace of it. The market changes, obviously, as with any market, but. So that's where we are. That's our 17-year journey so far. Obviously, there's more intricacies in there somewhere, which we'll probably go through.
So it's medical recruitment.
So it's medical recruitment. So providing nurses and doctors into part-time and sometimes permanent roles within the NHS and in private as well. Nursing came further down the road. So we started with doctors predominantly. It started actually with me recruiting psychiatrists. That was what I'd had experience.
Is that from personal experience?
Personal contact. No, it was psychiatry was where I'd been recruiting in the past, so it made sense to kind of start with what we know, and then that spawned out quite quickly into some other good areas, which general medicine and anaesthetics and surgery came next, and then it's kind of grown from there. Nursing was introduced a bit later down the road. And that's now growing. We've got an office in India that's also servicing the recruitment needs for nursing, where we've got about 50 staff, which is a mixture of sales consultants and back office and compliance as well. So
what made you start back in the day? What gave you that inspiration to come out of employment, safe job?
It's not. I don't think it's your normal route, because normally you'll have someone that would have this powerful kind of story of I wanted to set up a business because this happened and that happened and so forth, and actually it wasn't any of that. I was quite happy. I'd been in a state agency for about 8 years, which I loved. It was just dealing with people all day long. It didn't seem like a job. It was it was something that I kind of grew to love. The market in a state agency kind of went wobbly in about 2007, and I'd given it a good go, and I thought I can use these skills somewhere else, and recruitment is something I'd heard of. And to be quite honest, locally there was a couple of 2 or 3 kind of good medical recruitment agencies where we knew that there was a business to be had there and some money to be made. So as a kind of, I'm going to try and do the maths here, I was about 22, 23 when I went into it, and I'd set up a department for them, which was a brand new department. They were quite a new business themselves, 2 or 3 years old, and there were some changes in commission structures and stuff where it felt like they were just penny pinching in certain areas, which if you see that in the early days, you kind of have a decision to make. Is this where I want to stay? Do I want to look at potentially somewhere else within this arena or even a competitor. And it was a family dinner. It was a family Sunday roast, which we love. And they go on for hours because it's normally food, but
great family,
wine and chatting as well. And obviously Dave, my brother, was there, and Jen, Dave's wife, my sister-in-law. And Dave at the time was in something really techie.
I remember.
Yeah,
I remember.
And if we wanted to go into what Dave does, he'd need to be here, because as I say, you couldn't have two brothers that are more different in terms of one being technical and one still liking listening to CDs, etc. So, but two very different skill sets. And he was a coder or developer, web developer, I think he says. I call him a web designer, and he says, no, that's not what I was. I was a web developer.
I remember it's a really funny story, because I remember this, because when I first came and spoke to you, when we were right at that initial stage, I hadn't realised that Dave was involved, but I knew Dave through another.
Yeah, of course you did. Yeah, from where he was. Yeah.
So I walked into this room and I thought I got this parallel universe. What's going on?
Yeah, what are we talking about today? So yeah, and Jen had been really successful in corporate finance and asset finance and so forth. So skills that we knew that could transfer quite easily over to recruitment. Dave was a different kind of category. That was a case of, well, I know I can sell, Jen knows she can sell, Dave knows how to put a website together, how to put
it's all the tech you need.
Some kind of handmade CRM until we can get money to get a CRM and so forth. So there was a risk involved. We both had both in a situation where it was starting young families and so forth. And one of the factors was we weren't looking to build anything huge. It was something where if we can build something where it's maybe us, one or two other people, and we can build something that, you know, supports buying a house and raising a family and so on. That was the goal. It was risky at the time, like I say, because we had houses and stuff and we didn't know. So I sold my Mercedes A-Class. It was kind of a relatively old battered thing at the time, because I knew I weren't going to pay myself for a few months, and I was getting around on a bike. And notice I took the plunge first before the other two.
I was going to say.
I still have them on that. Yeah. I'm sure they still had cars at this time. And started off in the dining room, and I had Nancy, who's my oldest. She's just gone off to uni, so this is going to make me feel old now. When she was about 2, I had a whiteboard with candidates' names and so forth written on, and she used to come along and rub them off. And I thought this is bad for business. So at that point we realised, okay, let's move to something. And Dave had a kind of garage that he could convert into an office, and that was great. But he lived about 5 miles away, so that then involved me cycling every morning from mine to Dave's to be able to go.
Saves on the gym membership.
I was going to say, let myself in, make myself some toast, and go and crack on and treat his home like mine. So that was great. Now we obviously had plans around how that was going to grow, and it grew quicker in terms of the figures we were doing than what we expected. So Dave and Jen came along fairly quickly afterwards, and then we had a decision to make. I think this is something where we might need to recruit. We might need some people on board, and when we got to that point is when we needed to start looking at other offices. So
these are those big aha moments, aren't it? And I think these are the moments that I think you can't underestimate in terms of actually the stress. It's that first real taste of stress. It's like, right, I'm going to go over and I'm going to commit and I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously the business is over a period of time. We all go through peaks and troughs. Mm-hmm. Would you say that was one of the toughest? Was that the toughest time? I mean, that first push. Let's all do it.
It was tough because everything was new at that point. And one thing that helped us really get going was anyone that we surrounded ourselves with, and making sure that we took as much kind of advice from the right people as we possibly could. There's no room for an ego when you're setting up, because more seems to go wrong than it seems to go right at the time. So there's no real kind of room for that. And it's making sure that you're really honest with the people that you're trusting in to say, I don't know what I'm doing here. We'd never set up a business before. I knew how to put a deal together. Dave knew how to code a website. Jen knew how to sell finance. None of us knew how to run a business. So it was brand new from day one. It was. So yeah, I think because it was the unknown, that's certainly will always stick out as the hardest point. Plus, cycling to work wasn't.
What about your first employee? That must have been.
So first employee, unofficially. So we had kind of a part-time employee in my younger sister who had just come out of A-levels, and we didn't have room in our little converted garage, so she was sat on Dave's sofa. And
true family business.
It was, yeah, uploading kind of hospital contacts onto an Excel spreadsheet and so on. And shortly after that was another kind of family friend, or kind of family of family, if that makes sense. And he was with us for some time after that. But it was kind of, again, it comes back to that people you can trust to start with, and I think that's the best way when you're growing something that feels quite scary at the start. Is just making sure that actually everyone that's around you is someone you can kind of,
that's interesting.
You can be open to, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That doesn't leave you, actually. Obviously, as much as we've got all of those employees now, it doesn't always work out. But
you've got people that have been with you a long time, haven't you?
Yeah. So yeah, that I would say, as much as you get challenges along the way, certainly I think the first one was always going to be the scariest, because it was new. So.
And I think for audience members that don't know, the tender process to get yourself onto the NHS preferred suppliers is very arduous. Very arduous and challenging. So how did you cope with those kind of challenges?
Again, do you know what? It's funny, because medical recruitment has this real kind of real name as something that's very introverted, because it's it's kind of dog eat dog, and you don't really, it's not like maybe an accountancy where you can kind of have friends within accountancy where you can lean on. Maybe not, I don't know.
Yeah, we do actually.
It's
been one of the big developments.
Yeah, it does feel like the reputation with medical recruitment is very kind of fierce, and we kind of broke down a few boundaries at the start by making friends with some other smaller that are kind of fairly similar size to us at the time, in the early days, and it was nice to have friends within it so that you can all sensor check when you're doing these tenders. I mean, it was really kind of arduous stuff, and it was a first for us. It was another first, and we knew we kind of needed to get on it, because we weren't going to grow the business how we thought potentially we could if we always stayed as a out of framework kind of supplier to the NHS.
So was that something you knew at the beginning, or was it just something that as you progressed that came to you?
We knew it was going to come up, and you couldn't kind of join halfway through a framework, and I think it was 2 years into a 4-year framework at the time.
Oh, right.
And so we had 2 years to kind of get a lot of
groundwork done,
and learn from some mistakes and so on, and go from there. Because there's not much room for error once you're on the framework, and that's kind of what we learned, fairly quickly. It's not just a case of getting on there; it's a case of how that then transforms the business once you're on. Yes, it gives you volume. No, the margins aren't necessarily as big, and there's no room for kind of errors in terms of compliance and so forth, because you're audited constantly. So.
But one thing, sort of having known you guys, I mean, what I loved was your philosophy from day one, though, where you were saying, again, you say about the impression of medical recruitment not being high, but you've always had that philosophy that you're not going to put a doctor or nurse into a hospital that you don't believe is totally competent and has gone through all the checks, and I think, do you think that kind of value has stood you in good stead? From an outside looking in, I would say
I think so. I think it's a family run medical agency. Sounds almost a little bit kind of like a paradox. You don't really get that. It's normally a very salesy. It's that kind of Wolf of Wall Street kind of
exactly. An entrepreneur.
So we were a bit of a kink in the trend anyway, just by virtue of being a family business. You wear two hats when you're working with the NHS as frontline as we are. You wear two hats. We need the NHS, and we've benefited from the NHS saving my dad's life kind of a couple of years ago.
I remember that story,
Yeah, and so you kind of have it from a potential user of the NHS to also we're a supplier of the NHS. So one of my kind of prouder moments, and it was some time ago, I think it was the day before Christmas Eve, or potentially Christmas Eve, and we were all kind of, great spirits, everyone's kind of enjoying themselves and so on. We've already had the Christmas do, so you always have that kind of lull afterwards. And we had a call from a hospital, I can't remember which hospital it was, but there was, probably best not to mention either actually, that they got themselves into a position where they couldn't keep the elderly patients ward open if they couldn't find, I think it was 5 nurses and a junior grade doctor. And they weren't getting any luck, and we said, right, there's an opportunity here. They were going to have to close this ward and try and divert patients to other wards and so on if we couldn't do it. So probably testament to the people that were working for us at the time as well, that nobody down tools. They stayed there until we got to a position where we actually managed to fill all of those positions, and we kept that ward open.
Kept the ward open, yeah.
It wasn't a big margin booking. I don't suggest we probably made hardly anything from that from a profitability point of view, but the feeling we had from it, I mean, we're probably now 10 years down the line, and I still remember it, and hopefully the staff do as well. And the reason why we did it wasn't actually because we want sales figures on the board. It was actually because we can all spend our Christmas knowing we actually kept an elderly patients ward open. So brilliant. So it's more to us than that. I think is actually it's still a massively important part of our kind of community in the UK, and probably undervalued sometimes.
So I was just going to say, I think obviously my background was originally recruitment as well, totally different type of recruitment. It was accountancy, but I think you can't get away from the fact that I think to be successful in recruitment at all, you have to be very commercial, don't you? Because at the end of the day, it's a service industry, target driven. Who would you say pushed that element most? Was it one of you or all of you?
Yeah, I think.
Did you wear different hats between you?
We definitely we always have worn different hats. A lot of people say, what's it like running a business with your brother? So Jen's involvement at the time, as I say, it was all hands to deck. We were, and then Jen's kind of moved maybe slightly away from the National Locums, locum people stuff to supporting some of the Medi team stuff, and kind of almost just keeping an eye on the finance department and so forth. And it's kind of, Jen's role has always emerged in different areas as and when it's been required. So Dave and I are very much in an office together, and people say, how does that work as brothers? And I think the key to it is we just let each other do what.
They say that about husband and wife as well. So
I was going to say, you've probably got it a lot worse. I mean, you got the Dave and Jen factor, but I think they managed to just keep a kind of completely different role themselves. But we don't. Again, I think yes, we get on well. We're good friends. We go to Tottenham together. We kind of do all that kind of stuff. But actually, although we're brothers, skill sets are very different, and actually our philosophy on certain things. And we often joke. I think if the business was left to just me, we probably wouldn't have got anywhere near. We would have it would have been a flash in the pan, and it would have been great for about 6 months, and then it would have stopped. And if it was just Dave, then we might not have grown aggressively as we did. And I think probably somewhere in the middle is where
it resonates,
where it works, and it still to this day it does. And I've got the younger brother syndrome of being a little bit more kind of let's push on, and Dave is the older brother of actually let's
the cool head,
It's great,
which is
great
dynamic. And so I think that's kind of always worked. What we've done when it comes to commercials and so forth is we lean on people that are really good at it. So we built a kind of non-exec board, if you like, some time ago, which consisted of HR director, finance director, sales directors, ops director, commercial director, and we give them the autonomy to grow the business. Now, each one of those in each one of those positions is better than Dave and I in those positions, and it's up to us to put the right people into those positions and then to bring it all together. So our kind of where we can come into our own or our skill set is when all of those people are then sat around a desk, and we then talk about how are we going to use what your need is to open up a kind of solution over here. And that's kind of what we've come down to. So it kind of means that actually a lot of the decision making around commercials and so forth comes away from our plate, and then we can start looking at things as a bigger picture. You can only do that if you're willing to let go, which, if I'm honest, we were willing to let go because we found some good people where we could say, okay, well, fine.
That's the big step, isn't it? I mean, when you're doing everything, when you're wearing every hat, to suddenly start giving hats to other people, and allowing them
trusting them,
allowing them to make decisions, some of which won't work, but it's then not berating them for doing that. And that's a big step for most small businesses, and I think probably one of the biggest inhibitors in growth. I think is that inability to be able to trust the people around you.
Definitely.
And if you can crack it, it makes such a big difference to the business and to the the business owner.
Yeah, and it's advisory as well. You know, it's your good sales. Yes, you've been involved since the start, so it's very rare that we would make relatively big decisions for ourselves if we needed to from a kind of owner point of view without coming to you guys. And it would be then very rare that you would take that, mix it with a little bit of your intuition and come up with anything different. So you generally kind of end up, and you do, I suppose, the more time you spend around people, the more you start to think in similar ways anyway. And actually our non-exec board can kind of, we can take the positives in that, but then also give them the autonomy to go away and come back and say, actually, I think we could do this differently. And that's kind of what that's what we kind of invite into the office.
So it's all been really plain sailing.
I was going to say.
Smooth.
No.
I mean, what is there a particular, I like to call it training, a particular moment of training where you think, yeah, I'm not going to do that bit again, a bit of mistake or...
Yeah, so I think it's... I think you can sometimes be guilty of probably getting too in depth with it and not necessarily taking a step back sometimes and saying, right, what is it actually that we need? Because, and again, I think that's probably where we ended up with an introduction of a non-exec board, because you do end up too kind of entangled in sometimes a small detail. Not to panic so much sometimes. I think that's being honest. It's not a kind of a moment where we've gone, oh, we got that wrong. There's, I think, in our industry where we're servicing the NHS and you know, we're very open to kind of government legislation changes. There's nothing we can do about that. That will happen, and it's just a case of how do we adapt to that and what do we do. As business owners, it's our responsibility to not panic when these things happen. You know, your sales managers, your consultants, and your back office, etc., will all panic when something happens, and it's up to us to kind of look at, actually, we need to find a solution to this. And in our government legislation, you know, and how open we are to that, then that we've had IR35 changes, which had a big impact on our business at the time. There were a lot of businesses in our industry that weren't doing it correctly. And that was a risk they were willing to take, which is, you know, their prerogative, of course. But we took the long way round. We said, no, we're going to lose potentially 100 of our working nurses because they're using non-compliant umbrella companies or payments, you know, payment models, etc. And that hurt financially. It was the right thing to do, I think. But of course, that comes with panic when you've got a whole nursing department saying, "Where's our deals coming from?" And they're kind of looking to us to say, "Have you not got the magic answer?" And so I think it's not to panic. There are times where we have panicked and you think, "Oh, this is happening," and actually, you can only do what you can do, or that you can only change things you can control. And one of the things I learned really early is, as long as you've done absolutely everything that you possibly can to best remedy a difficult situation, there is now nothing you can do. So there's no point in panicking, because it's just completely wasted energy that's not going to help, and it will filter through to everyone else as well. So
do you think that comes with experience, though? Do you think, you know, it's one of those difficult things, isn't it? We've had moments like that, haven't we, where we've said, look, we've been through this before. It's in a slightly different way, but you've got, you know, the more experience you get of dealing with adversity, you get more resilient, don't you?
And I said, you know, maybe actually the point I made about not taking a step out to look in means I'm actually sometimes not even aware of what those worrying moments were, because you just have to deal with it. And we've just come out of a tougher market the last year. So we had the COVID bounce, for example, and you know, figures were great. The growth was there. You couldn't stunt the growth by not recruiting, so you're having to kind of bolster in certain areas and so on. And yes, it was a bounce, because it kind of come down pretty quickly the following 12 months after that in our industry. And again, there's two ways of looking at it. You can kind of look at it and say, we need to worry about this, or you can look at it and say, I can't change this market, but we can do as much as we possibly can to pivot a little bit and try and find ways around what we're doing. The first thing we have to look at, of course, is cost at that point, and say, well, okay, we're built for this, but we're not getting that, we're getting this. And that was the first time we've had to do that, and that was tricky. And there's never an excuse for kind of wastage in a business necessarily. But it's much easier to say that when you're in a tougher market, because when the market's good, why do you look at that so much? I mean, we should, of course, so it's been a very good exercise and a good learning curve for us to deal with the market we had done. It seems to have kind of levelled out and gone to pre-COVID times for us now, and so as well as some kind of lessons on what the business actually needs, what's a nice to have and what's a must have.
I think that's a really good point. And as you say, it's harder to say we can't have those things that you like to have.
Yeah.
When you're doing well, and everyone knows. I suppose the other thing as well is when you're hiding when you're doing well.
The NHS, isn't it? Yeah. And it was, and actually it was important as well to do it right. I think there was a lot of agencies. I even heard of agencies, getting the kind of the COVID loans and this kind of stuff at the time, which is just morally,
it's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
I can't get my head around. This might be against some of the differences we talk about with the kind of
values,
family values and so on. And it was a busy market. Of course, it was. It's, anyone that was dealing with the NHS at the time, it was. But you kind of you had to do things right. So there were people, agencies you're going up against that. Actually, we picked up a lot of market share because we stuck to the rates. There were a lot that were trying to push higher rates and trying to make more margin. And again, it's just we've always played the long game. We've always played the long game. Who knows, if we hadn't, we might, be even further up the chain than where we are. But we're comfortable.
I think that's
sleeping
the point,
at night that we've done it the right way.
I think we've always said to you, haven't we? It's what do you want the business to deliver? If the business is delivering what you want, what's the point doing it for just growth's sake? Because that is not satisfying in itself, is it?
No, and that's what we're learning. I think going right back to the what we were looking to do, we were looking to set up a handful of people to give ourselves a nice comfortable family home, and you have a responsibility to change those goals as time goes on, because you're not going to stunt growth. One of the reasons we grew the way we did, or one of the aha moments, was when we said about getting an office, and you said, get the office, you'll fill it. Which I think was Manor Farm Court, which was...
We've got nails.
And I now know what the long game was on that. You can get hold of it, and it's going to make it easier.
No, I still had to persuade him to go for that.
I think it's really important, isn't it? I mean, I think the message coming through is, it's the message it's the big strength of the small business sector, the SME sector, the family sector, resilience, adaptability. That's what defines long-term success. And that's the thing that as a small business, we will always score over, the big, large, monolithic organisations.
Yeah.
That can't be lost.
No.
And I think you guys are the classic example of all those qualities. As you say, your external stakeholders include the NHS and, by default, the government.
Yeah. So
you're never quite sure what's going to happen.
No.
And you need that resilience and adaptability to be able to move with the blows, but you know what to do and you need to move quickly. And I think the thing that's always impressed me is you've never shied away from a decision.
No.
No matter how hard that could be.
Yeah. That's a bit we're sticklers for, is if we're going to do something, let's just do it. And I think we, Dave and I would have been horrendous working for a large corporation somewhere in a tree of people, because nothing seems to happen quickly in those instances. And for me, to be fair, but my whole working career, I've always worked for independent estate agents and so on. It was always one of those things in the early days where I looked at these kind of large, I can't do it. And I would probably be that. In fact, I probably was. If you could kind of.
You're unemployable.
Any of my old managers, I'm sure, would easily agree. I probably was a really, really awful employee. But and that's kind of where this spawned from, or where business owners will start, is because actually they've got ideas that they think they've got the confidence in to say, I think I can do something with this. And for us, it's just a case of adapt, and I think sometimes you do it without even realising. And the board you get, as I say, thinking along with you. There's never an opportunity for us to take our foot off the gas, because one of them will say, I think we need to do this, or we're getting this wrong, so we need to...
Constant evolution and improvement. It's brilliant. Brilliant. So, you've obviously got a fantastic business. What are you most... Is there an event, a celebration, something that... I think milestones are really, really important. Mm-hmm. And was there a moment where you suddenly thought, actually...
just being invited to a podcast.
You're not going to get a reduction of fees for that.
No, I think Again, they change, and I think where our sites changed along the way. Funnily enough, I think you could one of the first ones. There's probably 2 or 3 big ones at completely different times within the business. One was kind of like a personal one for me, Dave and Jen. We said, if we can get ourselves to X amount months, we'll book ourselves a trip away. We'll book a Vegas trip or something, which was nuts because I was still riding a bike. But it was
it's a long way.
But again,
you needed those goals.
Yeah. So we had these goals, and actually one of the first was hitting that. I think we set ourselves in the first 3 months, and we hit it by about week 6, and we just said, right, let's get it booked and so on. So that's how your goals start. They then move on to the business now. A few years back, winning the Milton Keynes Business of the Year award, which was a kind of, and it's not until you're doing these kind of award entries and so on that gives you the time to step back and look and go, actually, God, look at this. It asks for figures, it asks for staff numbers and how it's grown, and they're kind of sometimes the moments where you go, wow, actually, it's looking good, and you start to remember. So it kind of went from personal to the business, and yet we've won and Milton Keynes. We're from Milton Keynes, as I say. We went to school in Milton Keynes. We know a lot of people here, so to win the Business of the Year award was massive for us.
Validation, isn't it?
It was huge, and so we've won others that were kind of not as geographically relevant. The Milton Keynes one was the one for us, and so we'll always remember that. Going forward, it's changed completely, and again, I don't know if this is going to make me sound like I'm getting old, but we set the business up initially to support our families, to be able to buy a house, that kind of stuff. But now I look at it, and there's a couple of guys, for example, I won't name them, but who started with us when they were kind of 16, 17, 18 years old, and stuck with us, stayed doing it. And you look forward now, having children, bought themselves houses, built a family, and so on. And actually, we managed to support that through us being a platform for them to earn their money and build their success, and seeing our guys do it. And actually, that's how far in the journey it's gone from personal to the business to actually.
It's very satisfying.
The guys, and that's the kind of stuff. Yeah, that's the stuff I think, and yeah. So, and I'm sure there'll be more. I'm sure it'll be kind of in the next 3 or 4 years. We'll look back and say, actually, when we overcome the COVID bounce, drop off, and we kind of settled the ship, and then we moved on into hopefully kind of Australia, which we're looking at now, and Middle East. That'll take time, but it might be something we look back and say that was one of the aha moments, was actually going abroad and starting to offer our services over there.
So is there anything that you've tried and thought, no, I'm going to...
Yeah, property in America.
I remember that one. Yeah, I remember that one.
Like, we did that because we really wanted to, because we love Florida. And there was no other reason for it. That was... I think you have to do it because it's, and actually...
you had an itch, didn't you? So
Yeah, and the timing of it as well. For me personally at the time, it was a good time to be able to go over and spend a bit of time there. And, you'd just wake up and you'd have a little swim. And I used to hire one of the convertible Mustangs when I was there from like Alamo or whatever.
Yeah.
I'd always get talked into the upgrade. I'm like, salesman.
They're so good at that.
Salesman's great. Yeah, I'm meant to have just a small Dodge or something. It's like, okay, I'm driving around in this. And you'd then drive to the office with the only one with the roof down. It'd be December. To me, I'm thinking this is summer. Everyone else is kind of just getting on with their lives. And the day-to-day, some of the experiences were unbelievable in terms of going to work in this office from time to time in Florida. And even though that didn't take off, which it could have done in slightly different circumstances, it didn't help that Brexit, that no one was expecting, kind of kicked in, and we lost our potential for an English market over there, which was really what we were.
Kind of what you were going for.
That was our market. But what it probably taught me was pivot, yes, but pivot quite close to what it is that you're doing, or certainly where the skill set is or the experience. Yes, I had experience in property, but actually that was in Milton Keynes and not in
different market,
a completely different market. So be happy and excited to try new things, I think, but don't do that again.
But also know your limits, because you didn't keep pursuing it. You kind of decided,
no, it was costing,
we've put enough in. It didn't work. Pull back.
It was the age-old thing of, we've put a lot of chips on this now. Do we put a load more chips on it and hope it turns into something? And I think that's where common sense also kicked in, and we looked at why it wasn't happening. They were factors out of our kind of grip, and it was I definitely see I try and see the positives and everything. One is you learn a lesson from it. Two is actually I quite enjoyed it at the time.
Yeah.
And three is try and stay with within where you're at. I mean, we've just pivoted again into something that's not medical recruitment, which of course is the launch of Hammond Rock.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about that later on. I mean, that's really exciting. Yeah.
So it hasn't scarred us for life because we are willing to do something, but there's far more. There's far more common sense used around the.
Well, let's talk about that. It's a good opportunity. It's a good segue to talk about Hammond Rock, and obviously leaning very much on Jen's experience as well.
It is, yeah.
So it's not completely left field, which is I think what you were saying
exactly
a moment
that.
ago.
Yeah. And it really is in the same kind of market that she came from. So Jen has spent, I dare say, about the same. So we've worked. She was born in the same hospital as me a week later.
Oh, right, okay.
Which is relevant because it wasn't even a real hospital. It was like a maternity unit in Bletchley that was only a maternity unit for about a year. So anyone that's my age, if you speak to them, they were normally born in
that area.
Yeah, Wally Drive as well. So Wally Drive. That's where Jen and I were born. But yeah, so for about the same, our career path was very much. It started at about the same time. She went into corporate finance. Didn't know each other, but she went into corporate finance and asset finance and. Had been very successful with it. I was very aware of it. Obviously, Jen being with Dave and understanding, you kind of get to learn a little bit, and it looked interesting and exciting to be involved in that. So obviously, when we set up, there was always discussions between us. It'd be good at some point to be able to pick that up. Naturally, with the 1,000 miles an hour that the recruitment business was going at, it was a case of let's not spread ourselves too thin. Let's just concentrate on building this, and growing it. We got to a point a couple of times where we said, should we look at this? And, we knew the market would be strong at the timings that we were looking. But again, it would always just coincide with, look, we need all hands on deck. It might be that we're going for a framework and it needs all of our attention. Yeah. Just before COVID, we looked at it. And then COVID would have been, probably quite a poor time to be starting something like that. And then we decided it. We just said, look, we can do this now. And we've managed to kind of, Jen had finished on some good projects where she was kind of redeveloping the finance team and helping a lot of those processes to work, and it just seemed the perfect time to say, actually, should we look at this now and let's go there, build a really nice brand, which I think it is. Sounds like it's been around for a long time.
Hammond Rock sounds,
as it is. It's actually only been a few months, but starting to establish itself exactly how we want. We've got a couple of good experts within the market. We didn't want it to be something that is just Jen running this. Yes, Jen is kind of forming it, but we wanted it to be really good senior people that can start to shape it themselves as well, that come in, which they've now started to do.
Which is the lessons you learned from National Locums, of course, by surrounding yourself with specialists and
absolutely
orchestrating them.
Yeah, and Jen had been in it, but of course it's been some time, and things change as we know. As it is, it doesn't sound like it's changed hugely. I think it's just process-wise, it's all changed. Technology's moved it on.
What sort of things you're offering then through Hammond Rock? What?
So it's lending to businesses, full stop, because that would kind of come into things like obviously asset finance, straight up loans. Asset finance was where Jen's strength was, so that's something where we've kind of taken that on board. And then to be quite honest, bridging loans, so we've had 2 or 3 that have come to us for that. Anything to vehicles, vans, etc. So you'll have, and the good thing is it's so broad. So one minute we're talking to someone that's got a manufacturing business that wants £400,000 for a new bit of machinery, and the next day, Ben will be putting through a deal for a scaffolding company that need a new van, and it's and again, I think that's why I really like it, because it's just that variety. It's something completely different,
and it's fulfilling that gap that a lot of the banks really don't want to know about at the moment, which is that with working with smaller businesses, things like I think VAT funding, self-assessment funding, corporation tax funding, and it's the things that ordinarily you would go to the bank for
in the old
facility
days.
in the old days, and now you just throw it into a bag. So I can see the appeal.
I think the bank's reluctance to lend like they used to has actually, in a way, pushed on people's knowledge base on because you can't just. I think it was always very easy to say, I need some money. You know what you need the money for. It's for cash flow, whatever it may be. I need some money. I'll go to the bank. The bank will lend me whatever I ask for, and off we go. But where the banks aren't necessarily as interested at the moment, when you're talking to different lenders, they kind of want to know a little bit of a story as to what it is. So one thing we want to try and do, again, where we were different with the locum business, we want to be completely different in Hammond Rock, where we're not just your average business finance broker. It's been set up by 3 individuals that have started a business, needed funding all the way through, invoice discounting or factoring as it was in the early days, and needed a loan for certain things. And so we've kind of borrowed ourselves. And I think sometimes it's very easy when you go to a finance broker, you're talking to someone that may not, yes, they know what the product is they're selling, but do they understand really why you want that? And looking at certain things where there might be actually more tax efficiency if you go for asset finance rather than a straight up loan, or we might actually, rather than saying you need 80,000 for this, it might be actually, well, 40,000 that is an asset, let's do that, and that might make it more tax efficient after I've spoken to an accountant.
There's a lot more solution driven.
There's a lot more solution driven, and actually you don't need that. Again, it's the long game stuff. If you can't get the deal done in a way that you would feel comfortable and happy that that's the best deal, I'd rather not do that deal. Because actually that person's going to appreciate that, because they can see that we've understood and spent the time actually understanding why it is that they're looking for finance. So again, long game, and it's tempting to, especially with the volume that you can get in this, to just go hell for leather. And we know that's not the best way. As I say, we want to stick out as someone a little bit different to the rest. And it's a competitive market, but there's some good people out there. And I think when you look around any business and think, well, that could be funded, there's funding for everything, and whether it's just cash flow. And as I say, where people have got sharper on why they need funding, people now understand that funding your corporation tax bill in the market we're in, where cash is king, obviously cash is always king, but it's definitely king at the moment. Actually, why do I need to pay that in one go? Why don't I potentially split that into 12 monthly payments and keep the cash to be able to grow in certain areas? Or VAT bills, actually, why don't I split that into 3 and keep some of that cash available? It wasn't really something that even as recently as 5 years ago people necessarily knew about.
No, that's right.
I mean, it's been around, but it's not necessarily something that people knew. So people now feel a bit more empowered to make the right decisions about why they're taking finance and what that finance is for. And we want to kind of be there to handhold in that process and just find the best deals.
I mean, I think as well with HMRC's view, HMRC always used to be, let's be frank, from a commercial perspective, quite a cheap funding option.
Yeah.
But of course, that's not the case anymore.
No.
So it does bring everything back onto the table. So yeah, I think it's a really important dynamic, and certainly with the government's statement and British Business Bank's intention to put an additional 4.9 billion into small business, I think the conduit will not be through the banks. The conduit will be through the second tier lenders, and which will obviously be funneled through companies like Hammond Rock. So again, I think probably a great opportunity. Yeah,
and to be honest, from a kind of resource point of view, we've got 10,000 square foot in Milton Keynes with space in there to be able to successfully run a business. Back office we still can pick on the commercial directors for information on contracts that we might have, and the talent is there and available for us to be able to use it without necessarily having to go out and invest in a whole team of people in the background. Actually, now we can just concentrate on real good talent to be talking to the clients and actually trying to find decent financial solutions.
So no slowing down.
No slowing down. No, we've just started again. We've just started again.
I think once you start, you get a bit of a bug for
we do it to make ourselves feel young, like I said. As soon as we realise we've been running it for 17 years.
That's what I've been doing wrong. Fantastic. Glenn, thanks so much for your time this morning. It's been absolutely illuminating. Obviously, I've been thrilled and honoured to be part of that journey for 16, 17 years now.
There you go. A few more years left yet.
So, but I mean, what we tend to do is we're looking at the end of every podcast. We ask our entrepreneurs to answer 3 quick questions. So, Nick, do you want to hit with the first one?
One book or podcast that has shaped your journey.
Okay, when I said I'm really old school, I've not listened to many podcasts, I know, and this is going to change. This is going to change dramatically from today, because I'm just going to listen to this one over and over. Book-wise, and honestly, it's going to sound like I'm just saying this, but I'm not. Normally, when I read, I'm terrible for fiction. I don't love fiction at all. It's made up. I'm just too
factual.
So it's normally kind of autobiographies and so on. There was one book that Nigel's asked you probably mentioned more than one before, but there's one I've actually read, which was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And Dave and I both read it about the same time, so we were kind of comparing notes, and completely changed my outlook on a lot of things. It really did, because actually what looks like common sense isn't common sense when you break it down and you work it out. So not that I've put everything into play from it, but if you can just take one or two nuggets from these things, that's normally enough to kind of give you something going forward. So so probably thanks to Nigel.
and I think a lot of the
totally
philosophy,
unprompted.
It was actually
well, some of the philosophy that you've picked up from that really is making sure the business can function without you.
Yeah.
And because it's not a true asset unless you don't have to be in it.
Yeah,
isn't it?
exactly. It's not an asset. I mean, an asset needs to be saleable, and it's not saleable if they still need you.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly.
Right. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Doesn't have to be from Nigel.
Doesn't have to be from me.
It wasn't. Do you know what?
Wasn't. Oh, thank you.
No. But we're going for quantity of advice for yourself. There was no. It could come from anywhere, and there's so many. We had a fellow of the REC, Helen Harvey, who we've had as a mentor probably for as long as yourself. And actually, it's a really simple one, which I put into everyday life, whether that's at home, whether it's whatever it may be, is if you are dealing with a bit of adversity or difficulty or something it's only a moment in time. It's just a moment in time. So it feels really difficult and it feels really long and arduous whilst you're dealing with it. But if you snapshot maybe 12 months down the line and look back, it feels like 10 minutes.
That is such a good quote.
And that is the bit that now I will take on board all the time.
Yeah.
It's good because it means you stress less.
Yeah.
Because you do. And that along with, if you can't change the outcome, don't worry.
Yeah.
If you can kind of put that into place, it's easier said than done sometimes, but if you can just, as a bit of a mantra, if you're going through something where you need to...
So it's going to pass.
It will
like
pass.
COVID.
It will pass. You look back and it feels like 10 minutes. Yeah. And that feels like 10 minutes, does it not? It felt like a lifetime at the time. Yeah. So yeah, that's probably the best bit of advice I've taken.
And what's your one tip? I'll do the final one. Your one tip for someone who's watching this podcast and is thinking, I'm going to start a business.
Yeah, be brave and do it, because I think a lot of people think about it, but there's always something somewhere that makes them think, but what if? And the what ifs are real, and it probably will be horrendous to start with, and you'll make many mistakes, but if you don't try, you won't know. But also, I think nothing comes easy without hard work. I think we live in a generation now where you only have to scroll through an Instagram reel and see that you can become a millionaire quick. You know, get up at 4 a.m. and do weights and this and that and all these different things. And I think there is, unfortunately, it's affecting, I think, that next generation where there's this desire to get rich quick and so on. There might be the odd occasion where that works, and we probably know those people because they're all over Instagram and they're famous for exactly that. But if it's worth having, it's going to be hard work. And actually, it makes it feel much more worth having when you've worked for it, I think, is probably the key. So if it feels like hard work, it probably means something good's going to come out at the end of it.
Brilliant.
Great
Love
advice.
it. Love it.
Great
Thanks
advice.
ever so much, Glenn.
Yeah,
Thank
Glenn,
you.
Yeah, thanks so much. As I say, fantastic story, family story at National Locums. I say proud to have been part of that for certainly in a small way for 17 years. Really excited about Hammond Rock. I can tell you are as well.
Definitely.
So that's really good.
Yeah.
Every success, obviously, for yourself and the family and the business.
Thank you
And
very
we
much.
look forward to following your journey.
Good. Got plenty more. So.
I'm not sure another 17 years. I might. But no, fantastic.
No, thank you. Thanks, guys.
For your time, Glenn. Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for listening to this podcast. This is part of our Behind the Business series, where we focus on real experiences from real entrepreneurs. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please drop your finger on the button at the bottom to subscribe. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.